The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning and welcome, and thank you for joining us for Goals, Looking Ahead and Preparing to Succeed. We're going to talk today about goals. I know a lot of us have, we kind of hear goals and we roll our eyes and we kind of half pay attention. But it's real important for us to start planning the future. I think a lot of small businesses fail because they don't look into the next year and sometimes down the road 4 or 5 years to make sure they're doing things for the right reasons right now. And that's really what we're looking at, is we're not looking at today, we're not looking at next week. We're going to be looking at next year or 6 months from now. And if you don't have some clear-cut expectations, it's very hard to meet them and it's almost impossible to exceed them. And we're not just talking about goals for you, the owners or managers. We're talking about goals for everybody in the shop. So we're going to cover some things, how to set goals, some of the key areas that we want you to set goals in, kind of give you an overview of this. We're going to give you a couple different tools. We're going to give you a worksheet to talk about how to plan goals out. And we're also going to give you a couple of spreadsheets that are in Excel that will allow you to do some financial planning, some projections of sales and those kind of things for the future. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about goals. Why should we set goals? Well, the first thing that you want to do, the first reason you want to set a goal is so that you're focused. And by that I mean you have a direction to go. A lot of small businesses and a lot of automotive small businesses are kind of like water or electricity. They take the path of least resistance. They kind of go with the flow, the ebb and tide of what's going on. And it's not always what's best for the business, the direction they're going. They actually have a tendency to wander around. It's very important for us to be focused on what we need to do today, tomorrow, next week, the month, next month, the year, 5 years, 10 years. We want to have a destination, if you will. And once you reach that destination, it's not over. You just have to reproject your destination. The goals are going to be one of those liquid things that we deal with. We're going to have to change and grow with them, but it's something we need to work on every day. So we want you to be focused, excuse me, headed towards achieving your success. We want to define what success is. If you ask 20 people what their version of success is, you're going to get 20 different answers. And those 20 people may work in your business. So we want to define what success is, a milestone, if you will, a place where we've accomplished something. And track that and also reward it so that people feel good about achieving what they've accomplished. That's why we want to define the goal. We want to know where we're supposed to be so we know if we made it or not. We want something that's trackable. A goal makes it trackable. If we're supposed to be at 6 months into the year at this much money in sales and you're not, then you need to fix something. That's why it's important to have what we call the SCAN numbers, the Shop Critical Assessment numbers, be goals. They need to have some meat to them that this is where we need to be. And once you achieve that, then you stretch the goal out a little bit further. You need to always have it. But if you're not tracking this stuff, it's not going to make it easy to find. And you have to set goals so you can reward. When the team wins, we need to have a reward, whether it's just a thank you and an attaboy or an attagirl, or we throw a party. We actually have some clients that set goals throughout the year, and part of the reward is a trip to Reno or Lake Tahoe, and we go up there and do a class. They pay for the people to go up, have a good time. It's a great team-building exercise. It also helps the shop out because the goals stretch them. And that's the other thing that we have to make sure we do, is not make these goals so easy that we're not stretching them. It has to be work. And again, achievable, but work. So we want to have some kind of reward. Now, if we have a set of goals that makes us focus, defines what we're after, we're tracking it, and we have a reward, there's win-win-win for everybody. The shop's going to prosper, the employees are going to prosper because they've gotten something out of it also. So we want to set goals for a variety of reasons. Not all of them are listed here, but this is the main points of why we want to move our company ahead, as opposed to not having goals and just kind of wandering around. It's very unfortunate that in a lot of cases we are just kind of going with the ebb and flow. It's really amazing to me how many of people that don't know where they want the shop to be. What do we want to do this year? Where do we want to go? How much money do we need to have? How much money do we need to put in the savings account? What's our retirement goals? What are the shop's goals? What's the sales goals, the gross profit to have? And we're going to talk about some very specific things about it. And if we don't achieve this, if it's not these specific things, we're going to fall short of our goals. So what I need you to do is be smart when you're setting these goals. That means it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, and it's timely. Now, when you use the SMART system to set goals, you give yourself a real chance of being successful. If you just throw something down on a piece of paper, I call those dreams. And remember, if it's not written down, it's not a goal. It's merely a dream. So we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to give us the ability to achieve our goals. And if it's specific, measurable, obtainable, and realistic, the chances are we're going to have a better time at it. So specific, what do we want to achieve? Now, every goal you set, every area that you set will have a different what. But you want to be very specific. You don't want to say, we want to do a bunch of cars this week. We want to have a car count goal for the week, an average ticket goal, an average repair order. We want it to be as specific as possible. We want to know why we need the goal. And one of the things that we do quite often is when we sit down with a shop owner and their managers is we talk about, here's the car count we need. And this number is based on this average ticket and our gross sales needs. Our gross sales needs are based on our expenses and the gross profit. So instead of just saying we want $60,000, I actually will show them why we need $60,000. Because most people will work harder if they understand the need than if you just tell me do it. So what do we want? We want $60,000 in sales this month. Why do we want it? Because the overhead, the expenses, gross profit says we have to have this amount of money, which means we need this many cars at this much gross profit. It makes it or this much average ticket, so it makes it pretty easy. Who's going to be responsible for this? For example, we're going to use that very number we said a minute ago. We need $60,000 in gross sales. In a lot of cases, that's going to be the service advisor's responsibility. But if the owner's not doing their job and making the phone ring by bringing advertising in, service writer doesn't have an opportunity to do their job. So when we talk about a sales goal, then we need to look at that specific car count. We break the car count into how many calls do we need a day, how many are we converting to customers, making the appointments and having them show up. So there's a bunch of little numbers here that we can throw out, but we need to have a clear-cut, what do we want, why do we want it, and who's going to be responsible for it, so that we can move ahead. How are we going to do this? So if we decide that we need to raise our average ticket, say $100, with the current car count we have, and we'll make our sales goal, what do we have to do to raise the average ticket $100? Well, most shops right now, it's about a half hour's worth of labor and about a half hour worth of parts. So, A, are we billing things out properly? Are we giving away diagnostic time? Are we selling service work? In a lot of cases, we can get a half-hour service job fairly easily just by mentioning it to the customer. And again, we don't want to sell anything that's not needed or necessary, but we definitely want to offer our services. So the first part of the goal setting is we want to be very specific about what we're asking for. Then it needs to be measurable. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And this, again, is where a lot of people, we get employees that come through Service Writer School, and I ask them, what are your daily sales goal? What is your weekly sales goal? What's your average RO dollar amount? I don't know. He never tells us that. We're just supposed to sell some stuff. How do we know when it's a good day or a bad day? Because we didn't measure it. If we're not measuring the numbers in our business, it's kind of like playing baseball with nobody keeping score. It soon loses its ability to be fun because part of the fun is winning. So we want to make sure we can measure it. We want to measure it so we can see progress. One of the things that I'm going to give you on the CD here is actually a projected sales report that allows you to see how you're doing month to date and a projection of how you're going to do for the whole month if things stay as they are. Most of your service advisors don't know if they're making a successful month happen or not because there's no way to measure it and no feedback on it. So we want to make sure that we measure it and we give feedback. Number one failure of an owner is not allowing your employees the opportunity to be successful. If I know that I'm on the 10th day of the month and we have 21 work days this month, and I'm at $10,000 less than I'm supposed to have right now, I still have some days of the month to really hustle and see if I can't fill the gap. It also makes it so that if we're slow in the beginning of the month and we get busy at the end of the month, that we're more anxious to get those cars in and out and handled in a much more timely manner. It also allows us to provide feedback. So this projected sales report is actually feedback. It tells the service advisor if they're on track to make our goal. It also shows the technicians if we are on track for them to be productive. It tells them a percentage, and it also tells them a dollar amount that they haven't billed or over if they billed. So it gives everybody in the shop an opportunity to get feedback. My recommendation is you do this projected sales report after 5 days and every other day after that, and you should post it. You should let these people know how they're doing, and if they're deficient, then the question is, how do I help you achieve success? So if we're behind in sales and we look at our projected car count, and our car count is down from it was as an average, then we need to find a way of bringing some more opportunity into the shop. If we have cars and our average tickets drop, we need to find out why. If we don't have enough cars and our average ticket is not up, we're probably not checking the cars out. So this feedback will give you lots of ways of dealing with the goal in hand. So you want to always have something with feedback. It has to be attainable. It has to be reachable. However, it can't be so easy that it's a no-brainer. You gotta have it stretch your team's ability. You have to make them feel that they can reach it, but they're going to have to put just a little more effort. Now, in most cases, I don't want them working longer hours or staying at the shop more. What I want them to do is work smarter. We waste a lot of time. You know, in a couple different classes, our time management class and such, we actually talk about what 6 minutes an hour means to the shop as a technician. So it's little things that can make this happen. So you want it to be obtainable, but you want it to be a stretch. You want them to have to work for it. If they're not working for it, it's going to affect you. And the other thing we have to do is remove excuses. When we have a goal and it's obtainable, we have to take the excuses out of the picture, which means, why aren't we reaching this goal? Well, this happened, that happened. We need to take care of that. One of the things I always try to do when I have employees that are unhappy is I try to figure out what it is and remove the excuses. If we don't have enough racks, we may not be able to fix that. Maybe we need to schedule differently. But we need to look at everything and try to take the excuses away from them. We want them to have the opportunity to succeed. And of course, we need them to be motivated. So motivation is another big key here. If it's obtainable, even though it's a stretch, you take some excuses out of it, and then you motivate them. The attaboys and attagirls, when they do something well, you need to praise them. When they do something wrong, you need to bring it up in a professional manner. The yelling and screaming part of managing people only works so long. But what you need to do is find ways of motivating them. Be excited about it. When we're above goal or right on track to be at goal, bring it up. Be the guy out there being the cheerleader. You guys are our owners and managers, and ladies, it's your job to be the cheerleader for these people. It's your job to get them pumped up about doing their job. If we're going to achieve our goals, we need motivated people. And we also need people that I call our owners. And what I mean by that, that means that they have ownership mentality. Not that they own the business, but they think like they do. We also need these to be a realistic goals. Very doable. They have to be meaningful. And going back to why, if you explain why, the goal becomes more meaningful. If you just go out and do it because I told you to, there's no meaning. One of the questions you have to really look at when you're setting goals and we're trying to achieve them is most of your employees are going to say, what's in it for me? You need to answer that. You need to let them know that if we achieve these goals, this is the outcome for you. This is what you get. It could be satisfaction of doing their job. It could be a bonus. It could be a trip. I'll give you an example. We have a very well-run shop in Northern California, and he went out and he told the guys if they achieve a certain dollar amount. And it was a stretch. He really didn't expect them to do it. It was about $30,000 more than they were typically doing as an average, that he would rent the indoor go-kart track and they would go ride go-karts. Well, much to his surprise, they exceeded that the very first month they had it in place. They exceeded that sales goal, and he had to take them out. Now, why didn't they get it before? Well, a lot of times because it wasn't meaningful to them. They figure, hey, I'm working hard now. I don't get anything extra the harder I work. Nothing's going to happen. So it needs to be meaningful. You absolutely have to have a plan. That's where you have to write it down, plan the stuff out, short goals, and make sure that you have it in writing so you can refer back to it and keep you on track. Because if it's not trackable, you're also going to get very distracted from time to time. You must have an effort to reach. You know, if a guy's doing 39 hours a week and you tell him you're going to, you know, his goal is 40, that's too easy. So what would be a stretch? Another hour a day, so a 5-hour increase, a 6-hour increase. If he's averaging $39, tell him that 45, you know, he gets a bonus. So there's ways of making it obtainable or stepping this goal, but there's got to be an effort to reach it. If it's too easy, it'll lose its meaning and it just won't work for you. It has to be timely, and this is really important, short time-based goals. You know, there's the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are the other things that we do in life. So short time-based goals. If you're trying to turn around a business, we need to set some short goals and make them all time-based. So a classic example, something we talk to most of our clients about, is productivity. The nationwide average is 72%. So we go in and we find them to be at the nationwide average 72%. Well, I'm not going to ask them to go to 100. What I'm going to say is, look, guys, we're 72. I want 8%. I want us to 80% in the next 30 days. So let's sit down and talk about how we do that. What are the steps we have to do over the next 4 weeks to get us to 80%? Then when we get to 80%, and it doesn't matter if it's in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, when we get to 80%, we sit down and say, okay, let's go to 85. Now, 72 to 80 is much easier than 80 to 85. 85 to 90 is harder than the previous one. 90 to 95 is extremely hard. So you see, we want these short time-based steps so that everybody can kind of get in the mindset and start working towards solving these issues without trying to shoot the moon. I think a lot of times we go into the idea of setting a goal, and we've been doing $60,000 a month, and we say we're going to do $100,000. Well, a $40,000 increase in any month is a huge increase. And the chances are you're not going to succeed the first time you try it. But more importantly, if you don't succeed because it wasn't really obtainable, you're going to find yourself with angry, just the employees are angry and they're not going to put forth the effort anymore because they figure, hey, you're just looking for pie in the sky. So if you want to do that, if you want to increase sales from 60 to 100, then what we have to do is the first thing is go from 60 to 65 or 65 or 60 to 70 and then take it up and ratchet it up slowly. Short time-based steps is a huge tool to use to achieve your goals. Don't try to, you know, shoot to the moon. Make it attainable, but it has to stretch a bit, and then work out a plan to achieve it. And it does no good to throw out a goal and not talk about it anymore, or not talk about how you're going to achieve it. You must have some kind of plan to achieve it. You can't just tell them go out and be 8% more productive. You have to show them how it's possible. We have to have a commitment to these goals also. One of the problems that we have in a lot of cases is the owner sets the goals and hands them to the service writer or the advisor, and the advisor hands them to the technicians. There's no commitment from those guys. They didn't have anything to do with it, and it's probably much like the flavor of the week. The last time the boss handed them something or the time before that, where it just kind of fizzles out because nobody pays attention to it, and we don't have the commitment we just talked about. So we need to make sure that everybody's involved in setting the goals and they're committed to it. So a goal should be set at the meeting level, the shop meeting level. Again, why do we need it? Who's going to be responsible? What is it? And how are we going to get there? Needs to be discussed amongst all of the employees so we have a chance of getting some commitment out of them. No commitment, not going to happen. Must have a sense of urgency. Short time-based goals can't be so far in the future that we lose track of them. So again, I usually try to set most of my time-based goals at 30 days or less, depending on what we're trying to accomplish. I figure that in 30 days we'll have a good idea if we put the effort in and the commitment to see if we're on the right track. If we are, then we can revise the time frame. One of the things about this is always revisable. So we need to make sure that there's a sense of urgency. I can't say, you know, sometime this year I want 72% productivity to jump to 80. That's why you have to set that goal. The goal can't be so long. If I tell the guys, well, I want to increase productivity 8 months and 6 months, or 8% in 6 months, that's too long. There's no sense of urgency at that. But by the same token, it's not fair to tell them on Monday that by Friday I want them all to be at 80%. Because there's problems that we may have to fix. And remember, in productivity, it's not always the technicians. It's everybody in the shop, including your parts people and the customers. Everybody affects productivity. And the other thing we have to have is timely reports for feedback. Again, the projected sales report after the 5th work day, every other day after that, and any other reports that give us the goal or the progress of the goal, we want to have in front of us on a regular basis. Most owners never ever share with their employees any of the, what I'm going to call the financial numbers. I don't want them to know how much you make or how much profit you had, but I want them to know where we're at in sales, where we're at in gross profit, where we're at in overhead, and why we have to do this. It goes back to the why. And then give them timely reports. If we need to do $60,000 and it's the 10th of the month, we got a chance of making it if we're at 30. If it's the 10th of the month, we need 60 and we're at 10, they need to know that. Most service writers tell me that they don't get the numbers of how they did for up to a month after the fact. So, you know, if we're looking at July and we didn't hit our goals, and I don't know about it till the 1st of September, what do you think happened in August? I guarantee you we didn't meet our goals in August either. So you must give them timely reports. Now, you may not have a P&L by the 1st of the month, your profit and loss statement, but you should be able to figure out sales and give them some feedback, average ticket, average hours per hour, those type of things. And then when the P&L comes out, you can put together the balance of the numbers that you feel you want to share with them. Again, you pick and choose what you need to share, but make sure that it's timely. I also want you looking at the numbers. You need to understand what they mean. So if you set a goal for car count and it's not there, we need to figure out what happened. You set a goal for average ticket, what happened? If you hit your car count and you didn't hit your average ticket, you're not going to make the sales you need. If you don't hit your car count and your average ticket's where it's supposed to be, you won't meet your sales needs typically. So you need to understand these numbers and explain them to your employees so they get the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. This is the owner's job, to manage the shop. It's their job to facilitate the goal setting, and it's their job to make sure that the feedback is proper and timely. It's the owner's job to make sure there's a sense of urgency. And it doesn't matter whether you're handwriting the goals or one of the employees is doing it. As long as everybody's in agreement and you have some way to measure it and some way to give feedback, you got a much better chance of achieving the goals. Now, I'm going to give you at the end of the webinar, and when we go to the CD, you're going to get what we call an action plan or a planner. And we do this goals class live in a seminar format, and we actually work on the goals worksheets there, and I ask people to write down their goals, and then we talk about them. The problem is once they write them down, they file them away, they put them in their notebook or whatever, they're gone. Your goals have to be in front of you. So remember that as you set these goals, it's got to be something you hold up in front of yourself. It needs to be on the desk. It needs to be in the employee changing room. It needs to be in the lunchroom. Your goals need to be in front of everybody. And the chances are you're going to have a much better chance of meeting them. We had a shop in Northern California that every year in October, we scheduled 2 phone conferences, and we talked about where we want to be the next year. And then we worked backwards and figured out what we wanted to do in gross sales, what we wanted to do monthly, yearly, weekly, daily, what we needed to look at car count. And every year, this gentleman, we projected a 20% growth. So we projected a 20% growth in gross sales and in car count. Looked at the numbers, made sure it worked, and then we took and we wrote those numbers down. The yearly sales, the monthly sales, the weekly sales, the daily sales, the car count, and the average ticket goal were on a bright white piece of paper in black, computer printed, very readable. And he put those in the office where both him and the service advisor saw them almost everywhere they looked. It wasn't inside of the customers, but if he looked up from his desk, there was one underneath the counter that the customers are greeted at. So if he looked up from his desk, he was staring at it. He had one on his slide table on his desk, so he could pull that out if he needed to. They had one in the back of the parts room. They had one in the employee lounge. They put everything out there and said, this is what we want to do. And amazingly, they did far better at that than one would anticipate. 20% is a huge growth. This is a well-established business. But he would average somewhere between 18 and 24% growth every year. And the whole reason he did that is because he says, every day I was focused on that. I looked at that average ticket, I checked it. If it wasn't right, I figured out what was going on. If my car count wasn't where it's supposed to be, I figured out what was going on. If my sales weren't where they're supposed to, I figured out what was going on. And this was a religion for him. He did this every year, and it was a collaborative effort. Him and I crunched numbers, and we talked about goals and stuff. Then he had an employee meeting. There's been times when I actually attended his employee meeting to help explain numbers to him. And then we asked them a very simple question. What do we need to do to reach these goals? And then we listened to the employees tell us what they thought the bottlenecks were in the shop, and we set about trying to fix them. Not always do you get to fix them, but it was a point of, if the guys think this is a problem, let's remove the excuse. I need one of these, I need this isn't happening, we're doing this. And all of those things, we tried to eliminate the bottlenecks so that we took the excuses away from them. They were able to achieve the goals. So it's important to sit down and really plan out. Setting goals, 8 things you must do. Here's the most important one. Write it down. I said earlier, if it's not written down, it's just a dream. You know why most people don't write down their goals? Holds them accountable. And here's what I ask my clients to do. Fill out your action plans, do your projections, and then send those to me. And I will, on a regular basis, review them with you to make sure that you're on track. I might have 35, 40 people in a room that say, yes, that's a good idea, and I'll get 1 or 2 sets of action plans. They go back to the shop and they realize, hey, if I let Malin know what I'm trying to accomplish, he's actually going to call me and ask me. That's the #1 failure. We don't write it down. We don't hold ourselves and our staff accountable to this. If it's worth doing, it's worth writing it down. Not just in one place, but many places. Just like the gentleman we talked about. He wrote it down and he put it in front of himself and everybody else in the business, so we had the best chance of reaching those goals. Remember that goals are tools. They're not the end-all, the beat-all. They're part of the process. And I'll be honest with you, I think they're just like the calculator or the computer. You use them. If you don't use them, they're a waste of time and money. But I want you to remember that the whole purpose of writing the goals down and setting the goals is to grow your business. When you grow your business, it should become more profitable. You should have more fun in the business. It's always more fun whenever you make a paycheck every time. Just remember they're tools. They're not emotional. They're like 7/16 wrenches. They're just something you use. Make your goals positive. Find the good things and make those your goals. For example, I track comebacks. Here's the problem, though. If you focus on comebacks, guess what you get? Comebacks. So we talk about them, but by talking about the quality of the product, by talking about delivering the car properly, to talk about the quality control we do, we're actually solving the comeback issue without talking about comebacks. None of your employees want to hear there was a mistake. None of your employees are really anxious to get their butts chewed about it. You have to talk about it, but make stuff positive. Try not to be the naysayer and make everything a negative. Make it as positive as possible. If we're not converting enough calls, for example, and I assume you're tracking all your phone calls and you know your conversion rate from a phone call to an appointment, from an appointment to an actual drop-off of the vehicle, the drop-off of the vehicle to the upsell of the vehicle. So you track those numbers. So let's say that we notice that we're not closing enough appointments. Instead of going to your service advisor and saying, hey, you're not closing enough appointments, you bring the idea up as, you know, George, this is our goal for closing appointments. Out of every 10 phone calls, we want to convert 5 to an appointment. But I noticed that when we track this, we've only been converting 3. So let me ask you a question. What do you think we need to do to convert a couple more people on the phone? What is your ideas why that's not happening? Now, that's a much more positive approach to that goal of converting appointments than it is to go to him and say, you're not converting enough appointments. I don't know what you're doing, but you need to stop it. Because A, they may not know what to do, and B, they may not even know that they're not converting them because they don't see the numbers often enough, again, the feedback side of this. So try to make these goals as positive as you can and make sure that your employees are reaping the benefits of achieving these goals. If it's the 10th of the month and we're on track, tell them that. Hey, guys, I don't know how many of you noticed the projected sales report I posted in the lunchroom, but we're on track to meet our goal, and I just wanted to say thank you. Amazing things happen when they are acknowledged for their hard work. But the same thing, unamazing things happen when you chew on them for everything wrong every single time. So in everything you do, make it positive, especially in your goals and your setting of goals. Try to make it a positive influence. I want big dreams. I want very big dreams. I don't want you necessarily to share them with everybody in your life because there's what we call dream thieves out there, but I want you to do this in small steps. So again, we are at $60,000. We want $100,000. I have 2 guys. It's going to be hard to get to $100,000 with 2 people. So the small steps are, what do I need to do? Maybe I need to find another technician. If I find another technician, I have to find more cars. If I find more cars, do I have enough staff to handle the new influx of customers? Do I have the facility big enough to handle the new influx of customers? So I want you dreaming big. Whatever your dreams are, write them down and let's make them goals. Now, if you want to take this shop that's doing $60,000 a month and you want it to do $1 million a year, that's going to take a couple years probably. But you start today. What do I need to do this month? What do I need to do in 6 months? What do I need to do in a year? What do I need to do in a year and a half? Write them down. I'll tell you a little story. We had one of our guys actually fill out the action plans. He sent me 6 or 7 of them. And he had some great goals written down. I mean, he really put some thought in this, and he thought them out and shared them with his employees, and he sent them to me. And we talked about them from time to time, and I kind of got, you know, vague answers from him. So at the next year at Goals Planning class, and we tried to do a Goals Planning class every November, October for our clients, I asked him, I said, well, you know, Mike, last year you wrote down some very specific goals, obtainable. I mean, it was well done. Did you achieve them? And he kind of got this look on his face, and he says, you know, I remember writing those down, but I don't think after a couple months I looked at them. And I said, well, let's just see how you did, because I have your action plans. And, of course, his face fell. We went through his action plans. I believe he had 7 of them. And he actually achieved 4 of the goals. That's not a bad batting average. But here's the bad part about this. He achieved them, but he didn't have a chance to celebrate. He didn't reward because he didn't know he made them. So it doesn't do you a lot of good to have these big dreams and the steps written out there if you don't take the time to celebrate the victories. If you don't take those times to make sure that everybody knows you did well and your employees did well. I want you to use the SMART method we've been talking about. Make sure you go down, and every goal you write down, make sure it covers all of those, because if it doesn't, it set itself up for failure. Now, nothing is wrong with setting a goal and having to go back and change it. Nothing. Sometimes we can be over-optimistic. Sometimes we're under-optimistic. So the idea is to actually start setting the goals and adjust as you need. This isn't etched in stone. This isn't a tablet that you can't do anything with. Adjust as necessary. Maybe every 30, 40 days you need to sit down and look at what you're doing and where you're at and adjust as needed. But if you're not willing to try things, which means stick your neck out, and I have a file cabinet drawer that's filled with ideas for classes and programs and things for my clients that failed. And I don't throw them away and I don't think of them as failures. I think it was the wrong time. Or maybe it wasn't as defined as it should have been. Or maybe I was the only one that thought this was a critical item. But from time to time, I sit down and I go through that drawer and I look at those ideas, and I'll pull one out maybe a year and say, you know, it's time for this. Here's something. We're doing a webinar right now. 2 years ago, I wanted to be able to do this. I didn't have the technology, and a lot of the technology we're using today on the screens wasn't as refined or affordable as it is now. Technology geared up. I revisited it. We did a couple practice webinars, and now we're doing dozens of them a year. And it's a great way to train. It's good for you guys. It's good for us. So here's the idea. You have an idea, a goal, may not be obtainable. Don't be upset. Don't be mad. Readjust it. Shelve it if you have to, and then move on to the next one. This is going to be a refining method. You're going to have to work at this. Use different kinds of goals. Some goals are new goals. I want to do this. I want to do that. Some goals are what we call a revision goal. So we already have something in place, but it's not quite right. Maybe it's not well enough defined. We don't have the who, what, where, and how. Go back to that goal. You don't have to write a new one, and refine it. So use the refining goals for things you've already tried to accomplish, and maybe you need to tweak them a little bit, and then go ahead and use new goals. And even label them at that, so you know this is a brand new goal. Let's get excited about this one. And this is a refined goal. We got just another chance to make this work. That's the things that you need to be looking at is new goals, refined goals. Do I need to fix something in the shop, or do I need to bring something new in? They must be your goals. And by this, I mean just what I said earlier. Your goals is in the shop goals. Now, within a shop, you can have the owner has individual goals, the service advisor has individual goals, the technicians have individual goals, and then we're going to have the shop goals. Now, your employees, you should push them to have personal and professional goals. That way, they're moving their personal life forward as well as their professional life. One of the things that I set out, it's a goal of mine, is to try to learn something new every day. And either through something I've read, something I've listened to, an interaction with one of you, or anybody I come in contact with, I am trying to learn something new. And at the end of the day, before I go to bed, I sit down and go, did I succeed? Yes, I learned this about this, and I learned this about that, either through research, interactions, or my ability just to learn from anybody I see. So you want to make sure they're your goals. You can have a direction. You can have some thought process, but your employees have to buy into this. So I need your employees to be involved in this. I want you to meet once a week, once every other week. You know, a smaller shop once every other week. Once a month is stretching it in the beginning. But if you meet, this should be a topic of discussion. This should be one of the things we talk about on a fairly regular basis, is our goals. We need to have balance. You can't expect your employees, nor do I expect you to only focus on work. I want you to have a life. That's why I like the professional goals and the personal goals. Have them something, give them something to shoot for. We had an employee, a good employee, who loved to ski. And his love to ski was great, except in the winter when there was snow on the ground in the mountains, and it's a couple hour drive to get to snow where I live, he would want days off to go ski. And of course that always puts the shop in alert. So we put together a goal for him that when he billed a certain number of hours every week, he actually started pooling hours to take off. So when he exceeded 105% productivity, he got a couple hours. When he exceeded 110, he got a couple hours more. And he was able to bank these hours. So when he wanted to take a Friday off, he had already done the extra work in advance, and I paid him for the day. And we worked that out with almost all of our employees, some kind of reasonable, you exceed your goals, this is what's in it for you. So we need to have balance. I want you to have a life other than the repair shop and managing your employees, and I want them to have something else. Their family wants balance also. So build balance in everything you do. Don't make it so hard to obtain it that we have to be there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. How do we get started on this? And this is always the bottleneck. This is always an issue. So what I'm going to recommend you do, and I'm going to kind of go over this in just a minute, But on the CD in a PDF is going to be one of our action plans. And I have one I'm going to show you on the screen. We'll talk about it. You get some of those and print some of them. And you sit down and you schedule time to have a meeting. You share and collaborate with the staff about what we want to have become goals. We want them involved. Always remember that. It's not about you talking and them listening. We want them involved. And this is a key. Always start with a manageable number of goals. For example, I did a class on goals, and the entire 3-hour class, this man scribbled action plans. When he got done, he had 28 individual action plans, goals that he had worked on during class. And I asked him, what are you going to do with all those? He goes, we're going to go back and implement them tomorrow. I said, you will fail. You're going to scare the death out of your employees to bring back 28 different goals you haven't even talked to them about. I said, I want you to go through all of those, and I want you to pick out the 3 that you think are the most critical. Take those aside. I want you to sit down with your employees and explain to them that you came up with these action plans of things that you think we need to have goals on, and you felt these 3 were the most critical. But ask them to rate them and start with the 1 or 2 most critical, 1, 2, or 3, depending on how well you do with some of this stuff, and do 3 things or do 2 things. Or if it's never been done before and your shop's not used to this thing, take 1. Make sure that you don't overwhelm them. Here's what happens when you have too many goals. None of them get finished. You get a bunch of stuff started, you lose interest in it, it doesn't move like it should, you can't pay attention to it like you should, you stop accounting for it, you start managing it, you stop giving feedback on it, it falls apart constantly. So this manageable number of goals is very important. Then we want to make sure we write everything down. On the action plan, it has several spots for you to do this. And like I said, I'll go over it, kind of show you how it works. And then you must review this constantly. So if you make this action plan out and you do like that other gentleman did, and you just stuff it in a drawer and forget about it, it's done. That needs to be at the top of your list to review. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once every other week, but you need to actually go in your planning calendar or your appointment schedule and put down review goals and get that action plans out, get that idea out, and start looking at this and going, oh yeah, we kind of fell down on this one. Let's readjust. Let's go back and look at this. Let's get going on this so that you stay focused. If you go 30 days and don't look at your goal sheets, you're going to lose the momentum that you've gained. So I want you to review constantly. Once every couple of weeks, maybe bring it up at the employee meeting that you're having. This is where we're at. How are we doing on this goal? How's this? It's really important that you share this stuff with your employees, but you also have to be the leader in this. If you bury your head in the sand and forget about it, so will they. Maybe these action plans need to be in a notebook, and you put one in the employee lounge so that if they're interested, they can take it out and review it themselves. Whatever works. But one of the things that I find that a lot of guys don't do is basically the 5 things on the screen. They don't schedule time to do this. It becomes less and less important. For example, you listen to this webinar, you may get all fired up just like the guys in class do, and you walk out the door and you think, yes, I'm going to make changes. And then nothing happens because you don't schedule time to make it a priority. You don't get them together and share and collaborate. You preach to them, or worse, you're a dictator. Too many goals, too many things. You don't write them down, and you don't review them. It scares your employees to death when you go to a management seminar typically because they know you're going to come back all fired up with all kinds of changes. And in some cases, I think the day after you get back from the seminar or listening to the webinar, they're in the back room taking they've got a pool going about how long this is going to be the flavor of the day. So make sure that you make this a commitment to do, not get all scattered and do too many things at one time. And please review it. Now, I'll make the same offer to you that I make to everybody that's in my classes. If you're brave, write down your goals, do your action plans. I'm going to give you my email address at the end of this. Shoot them babies over to me. Give me the information, and I'll help you. I had one particular shop owner do his goals, and he wrote down, one of his goals was, I want to retire at 52, which is great. He was 30 at the time. That's 22 years. He's got a little bit of time. And that was the whole goal. And I told him, I said, that's not a goal, that's a wish. You wrote it down, But what do you need to do to retire at 52? So you start at 52 and decide how much money do you think you need to survive. And you got to start backing up from there. So one of the first things we have to do to get this guy to retire is we need to fulfill a service advisor position and take him off the drive. So we're going to do that in the next 6 months. That was one goal. By the end of the first year, we wanted to accomplish these things. By the 18 months, we wanted this. So what we did is we actually went and wrote individual goals for those 22 years. Now, we didn't talk to everybody about them because we had to finish this year's before we could do next year's. But we had the idea down. And when we got done, we had planned out how he was going to retire at 52. Now, unfortunately, he didn't retire at 52. He was able to, because he had this goal and plan, these action plans of things to do, within about 8 years after starting this goal, he was offered an extraordinary sum of money for his business. Because the business was self-sufficient, it ran itself, he didn't have to be there, and he took it. So just because we didn't retire at 22 doesn't mean that this goal setting wasn't successful. His action plans put in place the ability for him to get about $500,000 more for his business than if he would have never done it. That's how critical some of these items are. So it's not just about achieving the goal, it's working towards fixing it so you can achieve the goal. So let's talk about SCAN. And SCAN means Shop Critical Assessment Numbers. These are the numbers we look at all the time. These are the ones that I want you to establish goals on. And here they are. I want you to establish a gross sales, a cost of goods sold, a gross profit goal, an expense goal, a car count goal, an hours per RO goal, dollars per RO, and productivity. So obviously, we want some of these to be thought of and the numbers crunched. I'll give you some hints. Average hours per RO, what we're looking for in a general repair shop is 2.5 hours and up. For a specialty shop that works on 1 or 2 or 3 makes of cars, we want to see that 3.5 hours up. If you're a transmission shop, you should be 5 hours or up. So just to give you some idea where you need to be. Dollars per hour is not a good comparison of your business to other businesses because your hourly rate changes, your economic indicators are going to make that different. But average hours per RO is definitely a way to compare businesses. What do we want in gross profit? Our target goal is 66% for gross profit. I really don't get too upset if we're 62 and above as an average month to month. You can't make the same amount of money on every job we do. I understand that, but you need to be fighting for that. What are our expenses? What do we need to tie that to? And this is individually. Same thing with cost of goods. That's an individual process. We have to figure it out for your shop. What do we want to do in gross sales is determined by our expenses divided by our gross profit. So if I'm at $30,000, I need to do $60,000 in sales. If I'm at 40% gross profit, I have to do about $74,000 worth of sales to make my gross profit goal. So these numbers are not hard to obtain, and they're numbers you need to understand, and your staff needs to understand most of these numbers. So make sure you share them. We're going to give you a spreadsheet to do projections, so you can actually put a couple years worth of numbers in, see what you've grown, and actually do a projection for the coming year or the coming months. It's set up as a yearly thing. We're going to give you a projected sales report, and then we're going to give you a goal tracking sheet. All of those are Excel spreadsheets. If you don't have Excel, you don't have to run out and buy it. What you need is a program called openoffice.org. That's their website. It's a free program. You can make a donation to them, but it will open and allow you to function with all the Excel stuff. You may be able to use Google Docs at the same time. So next thing I wanted to talk about is our action plan here. And this is divided in, you can put 2 on a page, or you can do 1 on a page. Put your name down there and the date. What's the issue? In this example, it's low gross profit on parts. So we identified we have low gross profit on parts. So the plan of action, we're gonna talk about how do we improve this. So the plan of action is to start using the pricing matrix that we recommend. It could be to make sure that you're marking all the parts up, or it could be to increase your parts markup. Whatever it is, you write it in here. Who's the responsible party? Well, it's going to be the service advisors to use the matrix. It's going to be the owner to update the computer parts matrix, to put it into the system so it defaults to that. It could also be the owner who's going to make sure that the inventory is priced properly, current cost, so it's marked up properly. And then the owner is going to provide feedback to the service advisor in the way of checking it on a regular basis and letting them know if it's going up or down. What are the resources? Well, we're going to be part of the resource as their coach and consultant, and the computer system, because we're going to use it to its advantage. Put your parts matrix in your computer. Tell your service advisor to use it. Don't let them change the pricing. This is what it takes. When are we going to start? In this example, it's 6107, and we're never going to be done with this because it's an ongoing thing. The notes say we're going to recheck our parts gross profit in 30 days and let the service advisors know. So we're going to go 30 days, we're going to recheck the gross profit, and then we're going to talk about it again. So you can fill out this action plan. So let's look at maybe something else. Tech productivity is low. Well, the first issue is, what is it? It's 72%. The plan of action, move productivity to the 80 percentile. Who's the responsible parties? Technicians, service advisors, owners, the shop cleanup kid. Everybody that has anything to do with cars moving in and out of the business needs to be part of this responsible party. What are the resources we need? So what do you think? If we're low on productivity, what are the resources? Well, here's one that I hear all the time. I'm waiting for parts. So we need to put in place some kind of ordering system or follow-through system where the parts get ordered in a timely manner and they're not waiting on them. Another system I see that is a failure is the parts came and nobody knows where they are. So let's implement a system that all the delivered parts go to one spot. The parts driver doesn't wander around the shop and leave them wherever they're at. They have to sign for them in the office so they have the invoice, but the parts are on a particular spot. So everybody knows where to get them. The other thing that we need to look at is maybe it's because the equipment's scattered all over the shop and it changes every 5 minutes. So every piece of equipment should have a location, an address in your shop. And the rule is when somebody gets done with it, they put it back. A couple of shops I know put bike flags on their battery chargers and some of their portable equipment so they could find it by looking over the cars. But what I tried to do is get my guys to put the stuff back in exactly the same spot. So what are the resources to fix this? Anything else we need to do? Well, maybe car count's the reason our productivity is low. We're standing around. You know, we're done at 2 o'clock. Great. So the resource would be we need more cars. That will actually generate a new action plan of how do we get more cars. When are we going to start? Should be today's date. When are we going to be completed? That's another one that probably is going to go forever. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to check productivity every other day through the projected sales report. And then we're going to post that, and then every month at the end of the month we're going to have a productivity meeting to talk about whether these resources we had and the plan of action worked. So sit down and actually write this stuff down. And what you're doing by using an action plan is actually working through what do we need to do, why do we need to do it, how do we do it, and when are we going to do it. This kind of gives you the whole aspect of it. Now, you can go ahead and if you're want to, you can build one of these in Excel to where you can actually do this on a computer and you know your whatever you're comfortable with. But what I would recommend you do is we have page of, so if you have more than one page, you know, 2 or 3 pages. Again, don't do too many. You can certainly work through these and then prioritize them so you have them ready to go. Pick the highest priority, do that. Pick the next highest priority, do that. Out of all the people that I've talked to about goals, very few people do this. In fact, at the very mention of goals, most people shut down because it's not something they're comfortable with. It's not something they like to do. But this is what separates the spectacular businesses from the mediocre. If you look at most large companies, they do planning sessions. We have a transmission shop in Northern California that every year in December, on a Saturday, he pays the employees to go. They have breakfast and lunch. They rent a room at a restaurant, and they bring facilitators in. One of my other consultants, associates, actually goes in and helps facilitate this, and they fill out action plans. They talk about what's going on. His shop is actually pretty much run by the employees. They have an ESOP program and a board of directors that's based on the employees, and they make most of the decisions for that company. So He's there, he has input, but it's really about the guys. And what's really nice about that is once they get involved in that kind of planning and setting the goals, they self-police. You don't have to be the bad guy because they will go out and make sure anybody that's not pulling their weight or staying focused on the goals hears from it from an employee in a positive, professional manner. They track numbers. They know every day where they're at, where they're headed, what they need to do. Every employee in the business, from the guy who picks up and delivers the customers to the owner. They have a whiteboard. The numbers change every day. And it's really important for you to get your business to that level. Most of us are not reaching the level of success we need and want and should have because we don't have a plan in place. I find most shop owners are so busy getting a car done today or getting this workload out today or tomorrow or worrying about making payroll next week or this week to never actually sit up and look down the road. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. And that's what we're doing in our business sometimes. I want you to think long-term, down the road, how can I make my business prosper and grow? And if your ultimate goal is to not have to be there, you need to start now. If your ultimate goal is to sell it like the gentleman we did, then you need to have some long-range planning. Strategic planning, again, maybe absolutely a daily sales goal, a weekly sales goal, a monthly sales goal, monthly car count, those kind of things. Where do we want to be in a year? Where do we want to be in 2 years? Where do we want to be in 5 years? Because 5 years is a heartbeat, it seems like nowadays. Time goes by so fast. So if you're not planning for it and you're not looking forward, you're going to get hurt financially. Will Rogers had a saying that you can be on the right track and still get hit by the train if you're not paying attention. And that's what a lot of us are doing. So the trains are coming. We need to start paying attention and establish some goals and get ourselves moving our businesses forward. I want to thank you for your time today. These are my contact information. By all means, if you have any questions about what we covered or you have questions about the spreadsheets, pick up the phone and call me. You will probably get my voicemail. I'm not in my office a great deal. However, the next best way would be to send me an email and say, we need to talk about goals or the spreadsheets. Can we schedule time? With the spreadsheets, I'll actually do a little mini webinar, just what we did here, but we'll do it just you and I, and I'll show you how to use those if it's not clear. Most of them have some kind of instruction sheet. If you start with the instruction sheet and work your way through, you'll be okay. But we're always here for you. Email's usually the best way. We have dozens of webinars coming up in the future. Check our esiseminars.com website out under schedule. It'll give you the upcoming webinars and the things that we have going on. And we also speak at a lot of trade shows. We're all over the United States, so you might want to check there from time to time. There's a possibility we'll be someplace near you that we can get to meet face-to-face and talk and see what I can do to help you. I really appreciate your time today. Let's take a quick moment. If anybody has a question, go ahead and use the chat log and ask me the question, and I'll try to answer it for everybody, and then we'll be on our way. Okay, Joe wants to know, I want to set goals, but the owner doesn't. I assume, Joe, you're a manager or service advisor? Okay, you are. Well, this goes back to you need to hand this to the service or the owner and have him listen to it. Just because he doesn't want to doesn't mean you can't do it. You just won't be as effective at it. But if you can start with one goal, something that you can show him the results of your planning, that will go a long ways to helping him. You know, a lot of times us mechanics are the kind of, you show me mentality. So if we can show him this works, we have a much better chance of him buying into it and using it. So the first thing I do is give him this webinar CD when you get it, have him play it and listen to it, and then find something you can do without his help and support. Write your action plan, get the other employees involved. Don't go behind his back and don't make it a negative, but give him an opportunity to see it work, and that may be enough to turn the tide. And if that doesn't work, why don't you give me a call and we'll talk about maybe some other ways in the future, or have him call me and let me talk with him about goals. And send him to the website. Maybe we'll be doing this goals class in person someplace close by, and you guys can get in and see it. We get a chance to pick on him a little bit in class. All right, we're out of time now. I really appreciate your time today, you being here. If there's anything that ESI or myself can do for you, please contact us through the numbers. You'll be getting your CD here in just a couple of days. I really appreciate your time. Now go out there, have a great afternoon, and let's make some money. Thank you for attending. Goodbye.